Hello and welcome to the Purple Knights podcast. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, cool.
Okay, great.
All right, so how do you want to do this? You want to talk about your blog and the past year, reviewing the catalog and all that stuff?
Yeah, that would probably be a good place to start, I guess.
Okay.
Hopefully this is finally happening. Crazy.
Yeah. It took a while to set up, but it's finally happening, yeah, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to do this really cheesy intro with the Dearly Beloved, but I don't know if I can even do that. But, yeah.
Okay. So this past year you've been going through Prince's entire catalog on your blog using a unique rating system, at least unique to music. Tell me a little bit about that.
Let's see. So how I went about this. Well, first of all, let me do a disclaimer really quick that this was the plan from, I figured 2017 because I became a fan in 2007. I figured doing 10 years later, I thought that would be a good idea.
Right.
And with the circumstances that how they transpired, it's I don't want people to think I'm doing it just because Prince is no longer with us, that sort of thing. So, but anyway, that was the plan from the beginning. With the scoring system, though, it's I figured one way to how do I want to put this? I wanted to kind of figure out mathematically how to determine what my favorite music is, because it's with Prince it's kind of hard because some my favorite album kind of changes every now and then, but I always had a certain number of albums I usually considered around my top 7. And as it turns out, at least 3 of them were definitely in there. The other 4, well, one wasn't too much of a surprise. A couple of them were. But anyway, the way I kind of wanted to do it, I became such a figure skating nerd, so I figured one way to kind of be fair, so I balanced good music against the music I really personally enjoy. I figured I would have a score for technical stuff, for the music, how good the music is, how well written the lyrics are, the songwriting, and just how original they were specifically to Prince, I guess. So, and then the component side, which I'm skating, it's about transitions, interpretation of music, emotion, that sort of thing. And I scored that, well, both add up to 5. And for the component sides, 5 is I really love, 4.5 is I really like it, 4 I like, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Right.
So that kind of helped me get everything in order for the most part. But yeah, what I roughly did, I wound up doing an album a week, listened to it a couple of times, and then what I kind of like to do is because when I kind of started, I joined Prince.org because I wanted to learn about Prince from other fans, because they would know him better than probably most people. So I was kind of going back to that formula, but instead of the message boards, I listened to the Peach and Black podcast, and I learned a lot from those guys. So.
Oh yeah.
And that was, of course, it was very entertaining.
Oh yeah, they're a definite inspiration for this podcast. Absolutely, Peach and Black, and then also Michael Dean's Prince podcast. Both of those podcasts I love. So yeah, Peach and Black is very entertaining. So, well, okay. Do you want to get right into the countdown. What do you want to start with first? The songs?
Oh, the songs are going to take forever. So I think I will do the album. And for but for the albums, I figure it would be good to go from like 1 down to 7, and then for the music, I will try to go from 100 to 1.
Okay.
And I guess we'll do the albums first.
Okay, so let's do the albums. You're going to do your top 7?
Yep. I figure Prince loved the number 7. He had it in so many lyrics. I figure why not? So it seemed like a nice, good number to do. Well, number 1 out of 7. Let's see. Well, I have mixed feelings about this because everybody who knows anything about like music or the 80s or whatever, they know about Purple Rain. So I kind of didn't want it to end up being my number 1 album, but it kind of just happened. There's kind of no explaining that. But at the same time, they were kind of instrumental in me becoming a fan in the first place. So at the same time, it's not too surprising. Come on, it's kind of a crazy roundabout story too, because like we were randomly watching TV, flipping through the channels. I don't even know how old I was at the time, probably 12 or 13, maybe 14. And then Purple Rain was on channel, and it was like maybe half over or something. And I'm like, I'm going to be totally lost during this. Let's change the channel. My dad's like, no, stick with it. It's a good movie. So we kind of stuck with it, and then the last couple of minutes won me over. Well, actually, I did get one over earlier on when I think it was like the basement scene, like where he just like trashed the basement and he found his father's sheet music. That was like really like that kind of hit, especially like hearing he never wrote anything down, and apparently he did. So there was that, and then I Would Die for You and Baby I Have a Star I'd heard a couple of times. So it was like something else just seeing him perform that in the movie, and it was just blew my mind. And he'd been kind of like in the back of it for many years. I'd seen him like do random appearances for like the past couple years, but I never really took that plunge to officially becoming a fan after the Super Bowl appearance, and then videos started coming out on the internet, and then one thing led to another, and here I am. So, but yeah, with the music in general, it's kind of nuts with the music. It's like really well crafted. So I don't know if he really brought his A game or he just really hit this peak of creativity or something. But it seemed like all of the songs were like designed to be like hits, and supposedly 5 of them might have become singles in one capacity or another, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, with that album, I don't think I gave anything less than like an 8 for total score. And then, of course, there are going to be quite a few of these in my top 100 because like I just couldn't help myself. And then there are like, well, I won't give the rest of that away, but a lot of them did chart really high. So
awesome.
Prince and the Revolution together, they just really got together for this album, and yeah.
Yeah, it's more of a band effort than his previous albums were. So yeah, maybe that has something to do with why the fact that the songs are so solid. And but yeah, great album. I can't really think of one weak track on there, really. I mean, it could be argued that Take Me With You is probably the weakest track, but even then, it's a pretty strong song. So, yeah, it totally makes sense as the top album on your countdown.
Yeah, I know. So even though it's like very cliche, but at least I know that the quality of everything else. It's not like, oh, Purple Rain's my number 1 album, and I never heard of any of the other ones. Like, no, I actually own a bunch of the albums, and I know them all pretty well. So But
Right.
yeah,
That
that's kind
should
of
be
how it happened.
that should be another disclaimer. We both are legitimate hardcore fans, and we know our stuff. But Purple Rain is our favorite album, our top album. So that's pretty. It's like you said, it's kind of cliche, but whatever. We know our stuff. We're confident in our knowledge. So yeah. So that's number one. So number two is
Yeah, album number 2 could have been one of 2 albums, and if I remember right, and checking my notes here, if I remember right, they were 2 and 3. They were pretty darn close together.
okay.
And funny enough, they were both written around the same time period, and the tracks like jump from one track listing to another, and so on. So Come, I think, won out because it's the more cohesive album. So that's number 2.
Okay. Wow, that's high up there.
Yeah. Yeah, that surprised me too.
So that
I
officially makes it your favorite album of the '90s, then.
I guess it would, yeah.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what that means, yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, this one is kind of nuts because I don't know if this had to do with it charting so high had to do with whether it was just the time period or the fact that I just had this crazy daydream listening to one of the songs, and then I listened to the album a couple more times and put a whole story together, which was kind of crazy. I think I had mentioned this on Twitter a few times, and might have gotten 1 or 2 like comments like, "You're serious, right?" Like, because the content is a little explicit. There's a parental advisory sticker on there just for the first and the last track for sure, but it really didn't go that far as an R rating. It was more PG-13, if anything. But yeah, I have that fond memory that I had, like, just rating it, and every now and then I do go back to it. But this album is kind of a very cohesive journey, and it's kind of connected with all these segues. And they were part of one track at one point, and later on he like broke them up throughout the album to kind of tie everything together.
Right.
But the thing that kind of struck me with this one, like I look at album covers and the artwork whenever I get a new album, and just to kind of get an idea about it what I'm going to listen to. And this one was interesting. It was all like black and white. He was in front of a building in Barcelona, and it's like a really old church. But to me, it made me like think of like, I don't know, like it was like him doing his own funeral or something. It was, quote, the death of Prince, and the symbol was going to come after that. But so I got this, when I listen to the album, that makes me think of like wintertime and just like the end of things, and it's like it's kind of dark, but there is kind of like with certain moments there is light. So there's a little bit of that, and yeah, I think that's ultimately that's all I really kind of have to say about it overall.
Yeah, it's an eclectic album. I think it has jazz on it, definitely, funk, definitely, and then it has one of the rare examples of Prince's dabbling with techno music. And I'm not a really big fan of techno, but the song "Loose" I really, really like. So
that's a good one, yeah.
It's a really eclectic album. Number 2 on your list. That's, man, that blows my mind a little bit, but I can certainly see it. You know, especially with the, like you say, the story you wrote and everything, and so there's memories tied up in that. But yeah, great album. One of his best of the '90s, I would argue. So that means number 3 is probably the Gold Experience.
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And it's, yep. Yeah, you know me, so it's you knew this one was going to be pretty high on the list anyway. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So what have you got to say about that?
Probably my craziest history with an album starting out. Like, I kind of had to be sold on it, first of all, because the whole area where he was, like, fighting with Warner Brothers, I figured it was a very dark and depressing time, and I didn't want to hear that. It's come out in the music. And then somebody sent me a link to Love for One Another, which was on some other site. I'm probably not going to say the name, but yeah, it was on there, and I watched it, and I think I was more into the storyline than the actual music. And funny enough, most of the music didn't end up on the album anyway. But all I needed was one song to get my attention, and it was Gold, which was the very last one. So it's like if for anything else, I had to get this album just for that, and somehow it was like available. I looked at FLE is kind of my go-to for music in general, and I just like went through there and I found a used copy for $17.99. It's like, oh, this is a rare album. I gotta get it. And then when I played it, like I couldn't freaking handle it. It was like big and bold, and it was like sensory overload for the first couple of songs, between like the explicit nature of like the first one. That one kind of surprised me, but then again, he called it P Control, and didn't really know until you listened what the P stood for. And then Endorphin Machine scared the crap out of me. It was just like my body was on fire. And then I didn't really recover for much of the listen after that. So,
wow.
But yeah, but after that, I listened to it more, and then just kind of fell in love with it. So,
right.
So many good songs on this; it's ridiculous. Like there are two that charted really high, and there were a couple of others scattered throughout that I had to. There were a few songs on it that did bring it down, I think, now in particular.
Right. Well, it's interesting because Calm and Gold were an interesting era in Prince's history where it was sort of like a rebirth. We talked about that. The Calm album signaling the death of Prince, and then the Gold Experience being the debut or the first album by the artist or the symbol or however you want to call him, the unpronounceable symbol. So I kind of consider that era sort of a renaissance in Prince's career. There's always the golden era that people talk about, which is roughly 1980 through 88. And then for me, there's a second golden era, which is 93 to 95, the early symbol years. So those two albums, Calm and the Gold Experience, definitely fall within that Renaissance era where Prince was just on top of his game once again, in my opinion. And like you said, there were a couple of singles that charted really high from that album, and it's really highly regarded amongst fans as a top album. I go between this album, Calm, and the Love Symbol album as, being his best albums of the 90s, and sometimes it's hard for me to single out which one I believe is his best of the 90s, but the Gold Experience is right up there. So that's number 3 on your list. What's number 4?
Let's see, number 4. This is going to be kind of a surprising one because you kind of introduced me to this one.
Okay.
What I ended up calling Prince the Musical Love Sexy from 1988.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. I'm glad that's in your top 4. Excellent. Yes, I love that album. Yeah, and I'm actually the one that sent it to you, so yeah, that's pretty cool. But yeah, so what do you have to say about that?
I think this kind of came out from the week I spent with the album. I don't know what happened, but I was listening to it in the car, and with all these, I kind of did listen to them in the car, either if I had the physical CD or it was on my iPod. But some weird thing happened where it kind of sucked me into like this kind of world, and I kind of saw it coming out as like this Broadway musical, and it's a very theatrical album that kind of that grabs you and moves you in so many different ways. And he called it his gospel record, but it's not so in your face about it. It's more of a feeling, I guess.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I agree. It's one of those albums that's in its own kind of universe, and it's weird. You can really put it on and get lost in it, and kind of live in the Love Sexy vibe. You know, no other album quite has that same vibe that Love Sexy does, and it's a really interesting album in that way. And like you say, the religious aspect of it is a little more inclusive, I would say, to all walks of life than maybe some of his later albums are. I mean, it's still Christian because he still talks about, from the frame, the point of reference of Jesus in Anastasia, but so it's still Christian, but it feels more inclusive, I guess you could say, with the religious aspect of it.
Yeah.
There's also the fact that it's one long track on CD. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, probably the one complaint that everybody has about this one is it's a single track album, so you can't really skip to like your favorite song. You're forced to listen to it as a whole. Unless, of course, you have an iPod, you can actually like scroll through it, but it does take a little while longer, and you kind of have to know the time stamps for each song. But like a couple of them, I would like to. I don't know, maybe on iTunes they do have the songs separate. I would buy Positivity for sure to just to have on its own, because I would put in my own playlist of like positively themes, Prince music, especially on like those not so good days. So.
Right.
Yeah, there was one comment I wrote here. It said, let's see, what this album, if you open your heart and your mind, you can really get something special out of it. So you kind of have to be open to it or receptive to it to really get to like, I really like this album, so as opposed to be like just neutral, I guess. Unless you're the type of person that's just wowed by the quality of the music, which, the music's really sharp and theatrical, I'll say again. And there's some chord progressions in it I found that are like really pretty to listen to, like in Glam Slam and I Wish You Heaven, just like the last 30 seconds or so. It's like one of my favorite parts of like any Prince song. It's so pretty.
Yep. It's definitely got its own vibe, that album, and it's interesting that you would say that you would have to open your heart and mind to it, because I was on Prince.org last week, and there was a thread of one of the orgers is a college professor, and I think it's a she, is teaching a course on Prince right now, and she said her students thought Batman was a better album than Love Sexy, which I know.
Oh, shut up! No.
In some circles, that would be considered blasphemous, but
yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That was insane.
Yeah. And somebody somebody made the point that you kind of have to know who Prince is and be down with Prince's vibe and message to really connect with Love Sexy. So that kind of echoes what you were saying about opening your heart and mind and sort of connecting to it that way. Because obviously these students aren't, particularly well-versed in Prince yet to where they can appreciate an album as nuanced as Love Sexy. But, yeah, I thought that was an interesting comment. They thought Batman was a more solid album.
Oh, my God.
I'll just leave that right there. And yeah, Love Sexy, on any given day, it could be my second favorite on my official list of ranking all 53 albums. I have it at number 3, but on any given day, it could be my second favorite behind Purple Rain. I love Sexy, so yeah, that's a great album. So that's number 4. What's number 5?
Okay, number 5 is, I'm not doing this for dramatic effect, I promise, 3121.
Oh, wow. Top 5, okay. So what do you have to say about that?
This was probably one of, if not the biggest surprise of the top 7. But when I really thought about it, it's like, well, duh, of course. For one thing, it's it was among the first albums I bought. First of all, because I kind of wanted a little of each part of Prince's career. I wanted a little of the 80s, a little of the 90s, and a little of the more recent albums. And this musicology I picked up right away. And then, my listens to musicology and Gold Experience, they didn't quite go as well the first time. Not quite what I was expecting, but with this one, it was just like so easy, because it's a pop record. Love pop music, and a couple of these I was vaguely familiar with by that point. Although I think just Lolita, maybe, and possibly Ti Amo Corazon and Fury. But yeah, just when I was listening to this one, for the week I was spending with it, I think I listened to it a few more times, like after that week was over, because I was just enjoying it way too much. And almost every song, well, not almost, but at least half of them, I have some sort of visual memory to go with it. Like Lolita and the other side, he performed on American Idol, which was like this huge thing. And I was like watching the finale, and he just like randomly came out. And I had heard he was in negotiations, but I never thought he'd show up. And it was just, that blew my mind right there. Just like seeing him just in the present. Like I hadn't really seen him currently. I only saw Purple Rain and maybe the 1999 video before that. But yeah, he just like, as he always does and did, he just like had me. So there's that. Then Ti Amo Corazon from the Brit Awards appeared. And at the time, I didn't know it was Wendy and Lisa on stage with him. I found that out after the fact. But just the arrangement of that was so pretty. And then when I heard the album version, it's like, this isn't as good as the other version. I wasn't expecting it to be like have that Latin flair to it. And then Black Sweat, of course, the video. That was such a slick production, that video. And, of course, that sense of humor came out with that one a couple of times. There were, like, the gifs floating around of his facial expressions throughout that video. So that's pretty cool. And Fury, of course, right now, Saturday Night Live.
Right, I was going to say, Black Sweat, the video, cracks me up to this day. I mean, his facial expressions are like one in a million. I mean, he can really make some awesome facial expressions. And then, like you say, Fury on Saturday Night Live, I had the same experience you did with Ti Amo Corazon on the Brit Awards. You know, I heard the live version of Fury first, so when I heard it on the album, it kind of fell flat. But
as they say in Peach and Black, the Fury effect, where it's like you hear the live version first, and then you get the album, and it's like, oh man, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so let's see what I had written here. Yeah, the big thing about the album I have written down, it kind of embodies Prince as he was when I was first getting to know him. His sound and his music and his appearance, and the impression he made on me when I saw the live appearances he did, like just leading up to the Super Bowl appearance.
Yeah.
And just in general, think of him just in general, that's kind of like the 2006, 2007 version of him. That's what I see. Like this, mature, sophisticated, and like ultra talented. So, and then there are like other songs on here that we'll get to later, but yeah, some really incredible songs that are kind of like they're a little different than you would expect from Prince, like Love and The Word and the Dance. In particular, those are some big highlights, and then later on, like I got into On the Boat, just the whole band five of it. That's such a cool way to end the album.
Yep, it really is. It's a solid album. I would say a lot of people overlook this album, I would say, in the fan community, and a lot of people tend to prefer Musicology over this album, but I would almost rate 3121 above Musicology, just based on song-by-song comparison. They have the same number of songs, and putting them head-to-head, I think a couple of years ago, I think 3121 won by one song, I think, but I would put 3121 above Musicology, most definitely. So yeah, great album. So now we're on to number 6. What's number 6?
Okay, this is probably the biggest surprise of all of them, because I had this album for a couple years and I just never listened to it because I never was in the mood for it, or I was just busy listening to something else, and I would take it off and I would put it back on. But I put it back on my iPod and listened to it finally, and I didn't really remember too much about it other than maybe one or two songs, just the titles I remembered, and then the final song, which I didn't particularly care for, and I'm still not quite 100% sold on it. Like, it's not, I don't think it's like the best song he's done in like a long time, that sort of thing, like everybody else will say. Yeah, but ultimately it's like, yeah, it's 2010. It's number 6.
Okay, there we go. Album released in Europe only on physical disc. And I actually was lucky enough to get a copy from a friend online. I don't know if they were through the org or through Facebook. But yeah, they actually sent me a newspaper. I think it was a Dutch newspaper with a physical copy. And so I have that somewhere. And of course I have it on my laptop as well. I have a good memory with this album because I can remember the night I very, very heard it for the very first time, and it was leaked on the internet like a day early, and this was back in the days when I had the hours of a night owl, so I was up all hours of the night. All hours of the night and morning, and anyway, my friend at the time, Nicky Tuzio, was able to get a hold of a copy in trade for some bootlegs, and we heard it together for the first time, and we were like freaking out. Each song, we were like, "Oh my God, this is the new Prince album, and we're hearing it a night early, and oh my God." You know, so every song, every song was like, oh my god, every song was like a revelation, in and of itself. But obviously, I've cooled on the album since then. But it is a solid album, and one that I don't think barely anyone outside the hardcore Prince community knows about, which is a shame because it's a good one. It's kind of a throwback to the old school Minneapolis sound in a lot of ways. Yeah, there's some really good songs on there. I don't want to get into the individual songs quite yet, but yeah, this is a good album. And of course, the last track you're talking about is "Lay Down," which is well, I wouldn't say universally, but the majority of fans love that song. And you're still not quite sold on it, but yeah, but it kind of was a precursor of things to come, I guess, in previous years. It's kind of has the same flavor of like a hit and run phase one type hard hitting dance track with a little bit of hip hop flavor, but we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, great album. Anything you want to say more about it?
Well, I still haven't taken it off my iPod, and I still listen to it every now and then. And the funny thing is that "Beginning Endlessly" is the one song that it gets stuck in my head, and it's like I have to listen to the album again. And oddly enough, it did not make my top 100 because I don't know quite how that happened. I think I docked it just a little bit because he tried to fit too many syllables into a line in the chorus, and it just still kind of doesn't quite jive.
Okay.
But that groove is like insane, and it's kind of cool how it kind of takes over from where Compassion ends. And
right.
So to me, it almost felt like they were like either like one huge song or it was like two parts of the same, and it just kind of evolved. So yeah,
right.
That song I really like, and Future Soul Song, everybody was really like that one, and it kind of felt like being around like Prince when he was in the 80s. That's just that same vibe, and I'm not going to get too far into that because I'll probably be talking about that one later too. But yeah, it feels very cohesive, and you did say it was like going back to the Minneapolis sound, and he had been trying to recapture that. It seemed like for over a couple albums between, like, I guess the Minneapolis Sound album, like before that was released with the Lotus Flower album, but it seemed like he finally was successful at like recapturing that and just feel brand new and current, which I thought was really neat.
Right.
But yeah, just the energy I really like, and it kind of sometimes it feels like the follow-up to the Planet Earth album, which I really like because it was like the first album that was new when the first year I became a fan, that sort of thing. So
yep.
It kind of feels like it takes off over from where it left off. Like the vibe is a little similar, and the person he is in the album feels kind of similar to me. Like I said, he wrote his personality is laid back and not taking himself too seriously, and it's just a pleasant listen. So
right.
I'm thinking if the radio wave somehow broadcast to like the other side or whatever, like Prince, why didn't you release this in the U.S.? Like seriously, it's such a good album. I still haven't quite gotten over that.
Right. Well, hopefully once the estate gets all the legal matters worked out, hopefully some of these lesser-known albums and albums that are out of print and stuff like the Gold Experience, hopefully they get re-released. And because,
yep, we can only hope, right?
yeah, because a lot of people are going to, hopefully, gravitate towards quote-unquote new music from Prince, which, of course the fans know isn't new at all, but it'll be new to a lot of people that weren't hip to it back in the day, you know. So I'm really looking forward to the point where a lot of those unreleased or out of print and overlooked albums get re-released. So yeah, that'll be cool. And now we're at number 7. So rounding out your top 7, we have which album?
Oh, love this one. The Parade album.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Oh,
okay,
wow.
So what do you want to say about that?
Well, first off, I think my adoration for this album kind of comes from my own custom version of it, which I actually have had for quite a few years before I got a physical copy of it. I mean, my ultimate goal is to own physical copies of as many Prince albums as I can. But yeah, my version that somebody was nice enough to send me. It's like Prince has the most generous fans, I swear. Like, I don't even ask for stuff half the time, and they will send like all this music just to like make me feel like I'm not missing out on anything, or just to really educate me as a fan, because I was still a newbie for quite a while. But yeah, with this particular one, it's like I had the MP3s and I burned it to a CD so I can put it in my car. And it's pretty much the same setup, except Mountains is later, and it's the extended version of it. And
okay.
And it's between Lover Money and Alexa de Paris, which are like for the last 3 albums. And just like with the circumstances, like I can't really listen to this on the physical CD with Sometimes It Snows in April is the last one. It just wrecks me. So I kind of have to have that like little positivity boost at the end of it. But it's just I don't know what it is. It's the album. It's very cohesive. It kind of runs together as a whole. Starting with the first 4 songs, I think he actually did the drum track for these 4 songs and just laid all the music down, so it kind of like all flows together. And then after that, he got to the other individual songs after that. Yep. And of course, it's hard not to think about Under the Cherry Moon while like listening to it. But for the most part, I just picture everything in black and white with Claire Fisher doing the string arrangements. Like I think the end credits said something about he like thanking him for like making all brighter the colors of black and white or something like that.
Yep, exactly. And it is sort of ironic in that way that the movie and the album art are in black and white, and it's such a colorful album if you really listen to it. I mean, it's got, like you say, all the orchestral elements to it, the Claire Fisher elements, and it's a really light, for the most part, really light, easy breezy type of album. And I know it's really beloved in the Prince community. I think in my personal list, I ranked it number 17, which you kind of took it easy on me with that. You said at least it's in my top 20, which is acceptable. But it's a good album, and one that strangely that Prince didn't seem to appreciate too much himself, at least at the time, because he said that it was, I forget what exactly he said about it, but the basic sentiment was that it was rushed and he could have done better configuring it. But I think it's a good album, and as an accompaniment to the movie, it's fantastic. And yeah, those first 4 songs in sequence, I mean, it's insane to think about, him laying the drum track, and playing it all the way through for 4 songs. That just shows you what kind of energy and drive that he had to succeed and to get the music out there. But yeah, it's a good album. It's a classic album on a lot of people's top 10 lists, if not top 3. Yeah, definitely a great album.